Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, no class, no personality and no desire. That was Jose Mourinho laying into his players after Manchester United's 2-0 win over Brighton yesterday. Mo Salah, he's on course to win the Golden Boot. He scored 4 in Liverpool's 5-0 win over Watford at Anfield last night. And Gareth Southgate, he's named his squad for friendlies with Holland and Italy. Can this group of players make any impact at all at this summer's World Cup? 3 men with plenty of pedigree this morning. Andy Dunn, he's the chief sports writer at the Daily Mirror. Matt Dunn is a sports reporter at the Daily Express. Stuart James is a football writer at The Guardian. Morning to you guys. Good to see you, Stuart. It's been far too long since you've been on. Not so long since you two guys. We've got to separate you somehow. There's Dunny and Dunny. Which one's Andy? Well, we know which one's Andy, but who's going to be Dunny this morning?
Well, original Dunny, yeah.
The original Dunny. Okay, you can be Dunny, you can be Matt. OK, good to see you guys. Thanks for coming in. Don't forget, you can tweet the show at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on your screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at some of the papers then before we get going. Ollie Holt's column. OK, so this is the beginning of Jose Mourinho's rant on Friday at Manchester United's training ground. 12 minutes of self-pitying claptrap, says Ollie, that exposed Jose Mourinho's delusions in all their towering majesty. I recommend reading every single word of Ollie's column this morning. It's an extraordinary piece. I don't think there's any love lost between Ollie and Jose Mourinho after that. Manchester United went on to win yesterday against Brighton at Old Trafford. Red Rom, Lukaku scoring the opening goal, Matic with the other one. But, of course, it didn't end there. It couldn't end there. Mourinho wouldn't let it end there. Andy was at the game yesterday, spitting mad. Mourinho slams his stars. No class, no desire, no personality, despite that win and into an FA Cup semi-final. The Sunday Mirror, Pog Shock on the bench yesterday. He's off, according to them. Mino Raiola, his agent, sending messages. He wants him out. He's looking for a move away from Manchester United. A man coming in to English football, Luis Enrique. He wants the Arsenal job. He's waiting for Arsenal to make a decision on Wenger's future. He's putting Chelsea off until that decision has been made. Salah, tributes to him everywhere, of course, as you'd expect this morning after those 4 goals at Super Salah's show at Anfield yesterday. And Gareth Southgate on England Matters. We're coming on to England in part 3 today. He's happy to take his family to the World Cup in Russia despite the security fears and the escalating diplomatic row between Russia and England. We'll come on to that later in the show. Andy's column this morning, History and Heritage and Heart. That's the Hammers of old, but not the West Ham of today. That's Andy's column this morning. It's already caused a bit of controversy. Newspaper wars starting. We'll discuss that and the reasons behind them later on. But, Andy, you were at Old Trafford yesterday, which is where we will start. We'll go back to the 12 minutes of fun to Manchester United's training ground on Friday as well. But talk us through, first of all, Manchester United's performance, but then, of course, the show-stopping moment when Mourinho walked into his press conference.
Yeah, when we were all rather hoping for an early getaway late on a Saturday night with the weather not being great, and then in he comes.
Thanks for coming in, by the way, because I know you didn't get to London until about 4 o'clock
by the time Josie had finished, it wasn't quite his 12 minutes, but it wasn't far off, and obviously that changed the narrative. But yeah, in the timeline of events, the game itself was pretty much a non-event. United didn't play particularly well. Brighton played OK. You never really thought the United were in danger of not winning the game, even though they had probably fewer attempts on goal than Brighton. It all seemed fairly straightforward. The news might have been in the team sheets to start with. The fact that Alexis Sanchez was on the bench, Paul Pogba was on the bench, Marcus Rashford on the bench, Ashley Young on the bench. You know, that probably was what we thought was perhaps the story to start with. And then when he took Luke Shaw off at half-time, that's when the alarm bells, I think, began to ring a little. Luke Shaw had a half-decent, from what I could see, first half. He had a small part to play in the goal, passing the ball to Matic, who then crossed for Lukaku to score. And generally, you could see Jose urging him to get forward. Then he got forward. He seemed to do OK. Then he was taken off half-time. And I think that's when we started thinking, you know, that's quite a brutal substitution. And clearly that was on his mind when he then came into the press conference. Obviously, United put the game away when Matic scored. And when he came into the press conference, you know, you could tell that there was something on his mind. You can always tell. We've all been there. He sets the agenda. And it was Jose who volunteered. He'd first spoken to TV. And then in an innocent question about what he thought of the performance, the catch-all question, he then goes into this one about no personality, no desire, no class, and how Matic was an island. He clearly prepared this analogy to start off, you know, which he often does. You know, Matic was an island in basically a sea of mediocrity, was what he was trying to say. And he clearly prepared it. Now, if he genuinely believes that Nemanja Matic was the only player out there of United who showed the necessary desire, he said, class, quality, to wear the Manchester United shirt, which he said weighs heavy, then that's a damning indictment on the rest of those players. Now, that can't be right, because Lukaku had a good game. You know, and other players there, he wouldn't doubt their personality. Would he doubt the personality of Antonio Valencia? No. He wouldn't. Or even someone like Jesse Lingard, perhaps. Maybe, but probably not. And it just felt as though there was some sort of underlying agenda. One, a general thing, which was to remind his players, you know, basically, look, I've protected you after the Seville game. I actually, you know, I haven't thrown you under the bus after the Seville game, but, you know, this wasn't good enough, even though they won. And two, there was an individual sense that he was particularly targeting or particularly picking on Luke Shaw. And that is what, to me, came across. He was then specifically asked about that, and specifically he said, you know, it was his decision. It was a tactical decision to take him off. And he then, basically what he implied was those things what he has generalised about, personality, desire, class, I think he was basically more individualising it to Luke Shaw. And I think for some reason that's what he wanted to get across. He was asked, Jamie Jackson of The Observer asked him, do you think this is a risky policy, criticising your players now in public? And he said, yes, it is. Could it backfire? He said, yes, it could. But he said, you know, I don't think I've got anything to lose, which I thought was all rather telling. So overall, a slightly, what we thought would be a routine press conference after a rather routine win, he's now decided to change tack a little bit and put it out there that he's not happy with certain players, and as I say, Shaw in particular, one of them.
Just to follow up on that, Andy, what was the most striking element of what Mourinho said yesterday? Is it the issue with Luke Shaw? You said that that he was. He sent Ashley Young out to warm up after half an hour, didn't he?
Yeah.
Was that the most striking element for you?
Yes, it was. It was the most striking element for me. I mean, he sent him out to warm up about 15 minutes before half-time. Had Luke Shaw not been indirectly involved in that goal, I suspect he might have taken him off before half-time, which would have been even more crushing and brutal than he has been now. And you couldn't get more crushing and brutal than he has been now. Well, you could if he'd done that. But, you know, that would have been a real blow to him. Bear in mind as well that a few weeks back he was saying how Luke Shaw would have a United share for years. I can't remember the exact quote, but it was along those lines. So there was that element to it. I do also think that, you know, I wouldn't just totally and utterly put it down to him having a go at Luke Shaw. He was clearly not happy with the performance, understandably, so it wasn't great, but they did win. So maybe it was a shot across other players' bows. Maybe it was a shot across Juan Mata's bows. Maybe it was a shot across, I don't know, Jesse Lingard's bows, in the sense that he wanted to isolate Matic. Now, it's no coincidence that he signed Matic. You know, two players who he singled out on Friday, Matic and Lukaku, were his players, his signings. So maybe one's players who were there before Jose arrived, he was having a go at them. But I do think that there was an element that was very, very much down to that one specific player.
Yeah.
I do.
Let's take it back to Friday, guys. Ollie's, as we mentioned already, has written about it, and every single paragraph is a must-read in this. Is a must-read in this piece. He says that 12 minutes in which Mourinho droned on and on about the heritage of Manchester United, and he disrespected the club. He spent the money. He spent big money on footballers to bring Manchester United back to European football's top table, and he hasn't succeeded yet. Why did Mourinho launch into this 12-minute defence of his record as Manchester United's manager? Why did he feel the need to do it?
Because he lives in his own little bubble, in Mourinho's world, that he thinks it's all about him. I was recently lucky enough to be involved in some of the UEFA Pro Licence training, the media modules there, where some of the former United greats were amongst the candidates, and they're taught, as before they go out into the wide world of management, you speak for 30 to 45 seconds because that's a soundbite that people are interested in. Mourinho is so self-absorbed that he talks for 12 minutes and makes the subject all about him, focused on him. He is the special one. Unfortunately, you're only special when your results are special, and that's the problem that he's got at the moment, is that the picture he paints of himself isn't backed up by the results anymore. It was great when he first came to Chelsea and turned the Premier League on its head. You know, he could do that, but now it just sounds like bleating, whinging. It's disrespectful to a club that existed long before Mourinho arrived in the Premier League, which is kind of the period that he's talking about mainly. Very disrespectful to Fergie, who achieved so much more than he seemed to be suggesting over the years.
Why was he disrespectful to Ferguson?
Just because to belittle a club over a period when talking about defeats that he inflicted on Fergie, in amongst the success that Fergie enjoyed, he's been paid a huge amount of money, a top of Europe amount of money, to come and sort these problems out, not come and highlight them all to everyone and say, well, that's the problem. We'll sort it out, Jose. Don't just moan about it, sort it out. And, yeah, just to go on about a lack of heritage and then to upset them all by suggesting City have more heritage, that's not going to play well with fans. They were all singing, to be fair, yesterday. I didn't see the game live.
Well, they knew their singing section, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, they had the singing section where the away section normally is for Premier League games, and they were singing Jose Mourinho's name. I mean, what I would say, I think the heritage thing is a linguistic anomaly to a certain extent. He's talking about, when he talks about heritage, he's talking about recent achievements. You know, I don't think
an interesting word to use, though, because he could have said recent. He could have said recent history, but he used the word heritage. Yes, heritage realistically takes us back a lot further.
Well, it does take us back, but he obviously used it in a different sense, and who knows how it's used in his native tongue. I think we must give him the benefit of the doubt on that. And also, you know, what he says is factually correct. You know, listen, I would say that the points he's trying to get across, no matter, you know, and say Ollie obviously takes umbrage quite understandably with the way he's doing it, as do you, but there are certain points that are valid. That's the problem. If he's perceived as being this moaner and bleater, he's doing himself a disservice, because the valid points that I think he's getting across, i.e. that it's not easy to win the Premier League anymore, or if it ever was. The competition is immense. The competition from City is incredible. The competition from Liverpool, Spurs, these are teams that we are all celebrating, and United are ahead of them. It's not easy to win the Champions League. You look at the last 8 teams in the Champions League. He's got valid points on all of these, but they're being totally and utterly camouflaged by the way he's going about it.
Stuart, who makes Mourinho right here? How will the dressing room feel about him? He's turned the media against him, the majority of the media against him. Whether that matters or not, that's a fact. How will the fans feel about it? His record, if we look at it, Porto 2004 Champions League, Inter Milan 2010 wins the league in every country that he's worked in. The treble last season, if you include the Community Shield.
Yeah, I can't include that.
OK, he even says, self-deprecatingly, half a trophy. OK, so 2.5 trophies last season. Second in the Premier League, into an FA Cup semi-final. Why doesn't he have the respect that he believes he's entitled to?
I think Matt touched on it a bit. When Mourinho first came here, it was like a breath of fresh air, and it's got more tiresome. By the time he'd finished at Chelsea, it felt like he'd kind of had enough of the way he was playing the media a bit at times. And I mean, that exit at Chelsea it's not in that territory, but it was extraordinary. I remember being at that Leicester press conference where he accused the Chelsea players of betraying him. It's not got there yet, but it's straying into those areas. And I think, you know, looking back on Friday, some of the things, I mean, he made Sevilla, no disrespect to them, they're a very good side, but he made them sound like world beaters. Sevilla are 5th in La Liga. They're the same number of points away from 4th as they are 15th. They've got a -6 goal difference. Everything with Mourinho, it's so carefully framed to suit his own agenda, and within that, there's very little self-criticism. So, in terms of your comments about how it's perceived in the dressing room, he's obviously done this before with Luke Shaw. He's done it a few times now, and even though, as Andy says, a few weeks ago he sort of moved towards suggesting Shaw he'd come out the other side and there was a long-term future for him, he feels like an easy scapegoat all the time, Shaw. And I don't know not just how is that perceived by Shaw, but how is it perceived by the other players? Because the attack yesterday really was on the bulk of the Man United squad. And you have to, obviously they have to be strong enough to deal with that, but I find it difficult to believe how that can have a positive impact on that group of players. And really, a manager, what do you see on the pitch with that team is a representation of the manager ultimately. And Man United at the moment are mirroring Mourinho. And those tactics against Sevilla, I found some of the things he did that night really strange. How he used Rashford, who'd been so effective against Liverpool on the left, why he moved him in on the right. And if Fellaini is the answer against Sevilla, what's the question?
What possible explanation would there have been? Because everybody was baffled by Rashford playing on the right. Sanchez was on the left and Salt for the majority of that game.
Yeah.
What possible rationale would he have had for playing Rashford on the right?
I don't know. I mean, trying to accommodate
He must have had a reason.
Yeah.
Because he played so well against Liverpool on the Saturday and scored twice.
And Mourinho thinks so much, doesn't he, about how the opposition play. Yeah. So there must have been, a tactical point that he was looking at, but it was strange. And Sanchez has not delivered in any way at United so far. And it felt inevitable that he was going to be left out. Arguably, that should have happened before.
But even so, Ash, I mean, Marcus Rashford should be able to play on the right. I mean, we're bigging him up as one of the most exciting talents that England have had for a long time.
Yeah, the only point I'll make there, Andy, is that Rashford hasn't been playing.
He hasn't been playing.
He makes his first start in the Premier League
yes,
since
I understand
Boxing
that.
Day, and all of a sudden he plays on the left against Liverpool, and then you say, OK, the kid has to play on the right 3 days later against Sevilla.
But is that the biggest...
You're confusing the guy.
How confusing can it be to be playing left one week and right the other?
Well,
it's not that confusing. It's only two things, isn't it? I mean, really, it's not that big an ask. I understand the slight sense of bafflement in the sense that, he did so well there and now he's over there. But really, left, right, the guy's right-footed. The guy's supposed to be, we think, a world-class young talent. He should be able to play there. And why he changed the tactics, I'm not sure. But, the general point about this is that we're asking questions of Jose and he is answering them in full. Not just, in fact, we don't even have to ask him questions and he comes out with 12 minutes worth. I would say that, sometimes we don't like the answers, but sometimes the answers are, that's what he genuinely believes. And I don't think you can knock him for that. I don't think you can... Listen, I'm not a great defender of him, and I've written many columns criticising him, but I do think that there's an element that where he is speaking what he feels. And when he bigs up Sevilla, he's being respectful to them, and they're not, they are fifth in the league. Whichever way you look at it, they're fifth. And our fifth-place team is a good team. So why isn't Spain's fifth-place team a good team? And OK, we can say negative goal difference, or they've conceded 5 in 5 different games. But he's right when he says they beat Atletico Madrid, who are a very, very good team in 2 legs in a cup tie. So I just think that it's just a bit too easy at the moment, just to sort of everything he says, to just bat it back at him and say, well, actually, this is wrong. And
we can't forget we are lapping it up as well. I mean, it's all over the newspapers, of course, over the last couple of days, and has been since they lost against Sevilla. Just to finish off, Matt, who is Mourinho trying to justify at the moment? Is he trying to keep the media happy? Is he trying to reason with the supporters, the owners at Manchester United, his direct boss, Ed Woodward?
I don't think he's so self-obsessed that he's now playing it for our benefit just yet. It will be being used as a tool to get to somebody. I think he's trying to appeal to the fans, and the fans seem to have bought into it. I think it's interesting that he chose a victory to launch into this latest personality thing, because it's the equivalent, but it's a sort of a ham-fisted attempt in the same way that Fergie said, put your medals in a drawer. It's that kind of mentality. Yeah, you've beaten Brighton, but that's not good enough. That's the sort of message he's trying to get across. But he's just the whole thing, he's doing it the wrong way round. It's like you referred to, I think, a bit earlier, Andy. You talk about Island of Personality. It's a great title for a Channel 5 reality show, but actually what it does is alienates the rest of the team, because you're bound to forget some... actually, no, on second thoughts, he did have quite a decent game. And that's why managers tend to either slate everybody or refuse to name individuals. It's because you're bound to leave somebody out like Lukaku, who has a half-decent game, who then feels annoyed because, actually... he didn't do any more than me, and why am I being tarred with the same brush? So he's just a little bit off message at the minute, and you can kind of see what he's trying to do, but I just don't think he's doing it very well at the minute.
Well, Matt, he's upset you, isn't he?
No, it was a privilege. I did a couple of Chelsea trips.
It's a bit late to say no, sorry. Next up, we're going to talk about the Magic Man. It's Mo Salah, scored 4 yesterday for Liverpool in a 5-0 win over Watford. More on him next. Welcome back. Let's talk about this man, the Magic Man, Mo Salah, showstopper yesterday. 4 goals in Liverpool shirt. He's got 36 for the season, 28 in the Premier League. Big win for Liverpool yesterday. Stuart, you saw him, obviously you predicted greatness because you saw him first game of the season, didn't you, in Liverpool colours when they played Watford.
Yeah, crazy game that was.
He's obviously got man of the match in every single newspaper across the board this morning, for good reason. Did you give him man of the match that day?
I didn't know. I didn't predict greatness. He played OK that day. He scored, but nothing sensational. I think I gave him something like 7 out of 10, and we had to do a little rating as it was a focus on new signings. And I said he'll play better than he did today. I didn't know he'd get to these levels, so it's extraordinary to score 28 league goals already. He's not a centre forward. I think I saw stats in this. He averages 1 every 85 minutes in the Premier League, which is crazy. It's kind of like Messi, Ronaldo levels in La Liga in the past. So he's been an amazing signing, and it seems crazy to say for 37.5 million he's a bargain, but he is, because his value must be what, 3-4 times that now. He's mesmerising. The ball seems to be sort of tied to his boot, and you almost know what he's going to do at times, or you think you do, but defenders are powerless to stop him. And he's a real game changer for Liverpool. I know we'll come on and talk about the City game later, the Champions League game, but he's the sort of person that could swing a tie like that, because he's just so talented. And it's amazing that he's gone to another level, because when you look back on his career, if you look in Italy, it was 1 every 2. So I don't think anyone could have predicted that he'd sort of explode.
Which is
onto
good.
the scene.
It's more than it's a good record.
Yeah,
isn't it?
for a guy who plays on the flank and comes in, absolutely it is. But the figures we're seeing this season are incredible, and you'd have to say it must be a really close run thing between him and De Bruyne for Player of the Year. I think a couple of months ago I'd have thought De Bruyne was nailed on, but I wouldn't necessarily now, because I think Salah deserves to be up with him on that same level.
Are we seeing a difference in the way in responsibilities of wingers in English football? Has there been an evolution and a development? Because the old school, if I think back to the great Manchester United team, say with Andrei Kanchelskis, his job was to show a defender a clean pair of heels, get to the byline and cross it for Mark Hughes, Brian McClair, whoever was up front for Manchester United at that particular time or that particular week. But are we seeing a different style of winger here, where these guys are not encouraged to cross the ball, they're encouraged to get themselves into positions where clearly they can score goals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you talk about that era, it was predominantly 4-4-2, so teams were set up differently then anyway, and it was the case of getting to the byline and trying to beat the full-back and putting a cross in. Those days...
That was almost the job of every team, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the way English football teams...
Everyone played 4-4-2 then.
John Barnes scored a fair few goals from wide positions
True.
at that time, so there were players like that around who did cut inside and score goals. But I agree. In general,
it's pretty unusual to play, as they call it now, sort of outside in, don't they? Where people are constantly, as we talked about Rashford in that game against Liverpool, coming in, left to right, and it's a shift, a tactical shift that's happened over time, and you're looking for probably more goals rather than just assists now from a wide man. But if you look at Salah, I think he's set up 9 Premier League goals as well this season.
Yes.
So he's...
Messi's got the time.
Plus, exactly. Plus, his actual conversion rate, you can go through all the stats. One of the most telling is the amount of... It takes him shots to score goals. So he converts so many chances. I suspect, I don't know, I didn't see the game. I just saw it in the corner of my eye in the Old Trafford press room. But I think... Probably he might have had 4 attempts on goal, maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe
4 shots, wasn't it?
Maybe more. But basically, what I'm trying to say is the percentage that he converts chances into goals seems to be extraordinarily high. I mean, Jurgen Klopp actually did say as well that I think everyone knew that he was doing OK in Italy. He was doing well in Italy. He was well thought of out there. Jurgen Klopp actually did pay tribute to his transfer department. Often, particularly Liverpool, for example, we have derided the recruitment process, and the fabled transfer committee. Well, on this occasion, I think Klopp was almost intimating that it was they who came to him and said, listen, this guy can do it here. Obviously, he's tried before. I do think also as well, just a small thing on these type of players, they are getting more protection from referees. They do get more protection. They can express themselves without real fear of being bullied out of a game. So I think that helps. And also, you can't ignore the role that the whole fluid three of Liverpool and the support they get playing it. He clearly relishes, I know it's been said many times, but that combination with Firmino is just exceptional. Apart from, of course, not last week at Old Trafford when, he did get the attention that he maybe didn't get yesterday when he was double marked, when he was treble, when he literally was suffocated by that United defence. So, and that's what he's going to have to put up with when it comes to the big games. Maybe not against Man City, because that's probably not their style, but against someone like United.
On that note, can I be just slightly cynical? I've got a little image in my mind of Harry Kane in rehab, watching the highlights show, saying, "Oh yeah, he's a one-season wonder." The same sort of criticism we levelled at him.
Mate, that is cynical. There's cynical and there's cynical.
I think
so. It's all about next season.
I think he's got to. Before we get too excited, I think he's got to carry it on into next season, because, like you say, there are going to be managers who are going to try and work him out, and work out that Liverpool system that are still piecing that together. So I've no doubt that he will still score goals. I don't think he'll score quite so regularly next season, but and he has got that time in Italy to back up to show that he is a proper player. But we've all got excited about players who've done it for one season before and then disappeared. So that's all I'm going to say.
Who are your top 5 one-season wonders?
One set off the top of your head. I'm just trying to think who.
Well, we can come back to it. It seems a bit unfair to ask you that.
I'm not suggesting he's going to be a one-season wonder. All I'm saying is that
Harry Kane.
Yeah, Harry Kane, a great one-season wonder.
Messi?
Yeah, Messi. What's he ever done?
He won't do it again, will he? Yeah.
I mean, and what will happen in this day and age, of course, is that you still probably won't be able to sort of go onto the news or go onto the Spanish news and find, this guy is, although he's only been at Liverpool for 9 months, he's going to attract attention now. These figures that he is posting are headline-grabbing figures. They are astonishing. Absolutely astonishing.
So the suggestion there is, can they keep hold of him? But where would he possibly go? I mean, this is a guy who's at the top of his game for Liverpool. Liverpool in the quarter-final of the Champions League.
He's not going anywhere.
Into the semi-final.
It won't stop people talking, and obviously, we often measure people now in terms of how much they are worth. So how much is Salah worth? If Coutinho's worth 140 million, how much is Salah worth? Etc. Etc. And you can go silly doing that type of thing. What you can see is a player who is loving playing for Liverpool. Clearly, you've seen those off-the-field thing he's done, brilliant. He clearly loves playing for Klopp. He clearly loves playing in the system. And he'd be mad, and I'm sure he won't, think about anything else than that for the next couple of seasons.
You'd have to say, Neil, a penny for Chelsea's thoughts in all of this, wouldn't you?
Because what happened there, this is one of the most talented players. This is an undoubted talent, a gem, when Chelsea signed him. So why couldn't anybody spot, hold on a minute, this guy's got something, and let's be patient. It might take a little bit of time, a little bit of nurturing. But why didn't somebody at Chelsea spot this and say, oh, no, we can't let him leave?
And De Bruyne.
Well,
there's two there, isn't there? And we can all be. I guess we can be wise after the event now. Maybe he needed to have that time, to go away. But it makes it all the more brave, really, on Liverpool's part to go back in and pay that for him, given it was a guy who didn't cut it here before. Was he given the opportunity?
Brave, Stu, but as we said, £30-odd million isn't nowadays isn't brave, is it? It's like, you can, if that doesn't work out. Do Liverpool really get any stick for the fact that, say, Markovic didn't work out and they paid £20-odd million for him?
Sure.
No. It's forgotten. £30-odd million.
I can definitely take myself back to the summer, Danny, when they made this signing and the amount of money that it cost to get him, to bring him back and to English football, and I did think, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I know.
Because Stuart says the Chelsea experience puts you up.
But then within 6 months they're paying £75 million for a centre-half. It was OK, it was decent, but £75 million, it's more than double they paid for Salah. What I would say about the Chelsea situation is, don't forget, the players that were blocking his pathway at Chelsea are still in that team. Willian and Eden Hazard. Probably Willian, more than anyone, I think, blocked his path then. And do you think that Jose Mourinho would, at the time, see what he would get at Willian in terms of an all-round contribution more than Salah? And he was younger then, and he clearly has matured into a very good player, and the experience in Italy has obviously done him good, and now he's clearly in his prime.
Okay.
You can't keep everyone, can you, at a club?
No.
You can't just keep everyone. It's OK saying, well, this with De Bruyne or Salah. Well, you just, but they had a big team. They were winning things. Don't forget, they were also winning things. So
they then sent him out on loan to Fiorentina.
Yes.
So is no one keep monitoring at Fiorentina, thinking, oh, he looks all right. Maybe we should bring him back and give him another go. Yeah.
It's hard for Chelsea to monitor all their loan players abroad, isn't it? You need to staff for thousands, wouldn't you? Let's face it. How's he doing? Where's he? Oh, he's over there. Yeah, exactly. He's one of ours, is he really? So
Florence isn't a bad trip, though, is it?
No, it's a great trip. But I know what you mean. But I just think that was. I know it wasn't that long ago, But in terms of his football development, it was a long time ago, and they had a good team that was winning trophies, so I can understand the mitigating circumstances.
All right. He's going to be playing the Champions League quarter-final against Manchester City. What do we think about the draw of two English teams playing each other? Of course, it's the luck of the draw, but is it a game that we're excited about?
Oh, I think, the week of that's going to dominate everything, the 2 weeks. I think it's a shame, actually, because there were many years where we were bereft of teams in the last four that you think, well, at least we guaranteed that. Whereas now, actually, we had two teams that in the Champions League could both have got there. So it's a shame that one of them's going to knock the other one out, which I think is going to be City edging over Liverpool just because they're City at the minute.
The fixture list, certainly Jurgen Klopp's complained about it. Merseyside derby sandwiched in between the two fixtures. Is this just the price that? And Man City, of course, played Manchester United, could potentially win the title. Do we look at this and think, well, this is the price you pay for success?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is what happens.
Yeah, it's unfortunate in a sense because there are obviously huge games in their own right, and United could win. City could beat United and win the league, couldn't they? Just on the eve of that, but. Yeah, that is a price you pay, and I'm sure Liverpool fans won't be complaining. They're in a Champions League quarter-final. They'd have gladly accepted that, given where the club's been the last few years trying to get back there. I think it's a shame, personally, that they're playing each other. I do think, as Matt touched on, I'm not saying they would have both got through, but I think there's a reasonable chance that may have happened. It is hard to call. Obviously, they've both beaten each other in the league this season. Liverpool's firepower is tremendous. I guess the big question would be defensively of Liverpool, and they clearly have been improved of late. But can they over two legs do enough to sort of stop City? And that would be my doubt.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say what you would say over the two games this season when Liverpool have had the full complement of players against City. They've had the edge, so I don't think there's anything for them to fear. Just going quickly back to the fixtures, I do think that's so tough, really. And when you think now, it sort of jars slightly, doesn't it? When teams are away on holiday now in Abu Dhabi and Spain and Miami and whatever, and then
holiday.
And then, no, sorry, on what do we call it? Warm weather training. On the beach. And you do think then, you have like all of a sudden three big games concertinaed into, a week. Less than a week, it does seem a bit odd.
OK, look, Danny, we'll have a part on the fixture scheduling next time you're on, OK? Which won't be too far away, it'll be a few weeks away, I'm sure. OK, next up, we're going to talk England. Gareth Southgate named his squad for the friendlies against Holland and Italy on Thursday. We'll talk about that. That's coming up after the break. You have to appeal for calm sometimes just before we come back, and that's what we just had to do. Welcome back. Andy Dunn's with us this morning. Matt Dunn. Stuart James is with us as well. Let's just remind you what's in the papers this morning. Ollie Holt's columnist goes back to Mourinho's press conference on Friday, 12 minutes of self-pitying claptrap. Read every word of it. I'd certainly recommend it this morning. Andy was at Old Trafford yesterday to see this. Spitting mad Mourinho, he slams his stars. No class, no desire and no personality. They still won, though. They're in an FA Cup semi-final. Andy will be pleased we're coming on to this. Very shortly, West Ham, history, heritage and heart, that's the Hammers of old, not the new West Ham, and England matters. Southgate, the escalating diplomatic tensions between England and Russia, but Southgate, the England manager, I'm happy to take my family to the World Cup in Russia. We'll get onto that in a few moments' time. First of all, we're going to talk about the squad, Matt, and the squad that Gareth Southgate has picked. Of course, there are some injury issues, certainly up front with Harry Kane. We could argue Daniel Sturridge as well, another player that Gareth Southgate would have been on Gareth Southgate's radar, but clearly Kane is the main man with England. What are your thoughts on this England squad going into these friendlies with Holland and with Italy?
Well, we always knew England.
As excited as I am.
Yeah, I think so. Probably pretty much the same level. We always knew England were Harry Kane plus some excited youngsters. Yeah, the Harry Kane team going to, and now we've got a double header without Harry Kane in the Harry Kane team. When we've got, we're struggling for a squad of 23. So why we've picked 27 names, I'm not quite sure, because it just gets thinner and thinner. We've got three strikers.
And it also highlights the weaknesses. It highlights the weaknesses of the more.
It does. It's basically anyone who puts their boots on regularly and it's English every week is pretty much in the team. There's very few exceptions, and so you get players that you would never imagine being anywhere near an England camp coming along. And
who are they?
Yeah, you're going to make me name them when you know the same as I mean, with all due respect, which means none at all. No, that's not fair. But I mean, they've had good seasons. But you don't expect to see Nick Pope as an England goalkeeper.
Let's not get this wrong, in case anyone gets upset with this. It is a great day in the household of Nick Pope when you get called into the England squad, of James Tarkowski. No one denies that it's great that you're in an England squad, and good luck to you. And let's hope they do well, and let's hope they surpass expectations. But are they realistically international pedigree for an England side that is supposed to be going to this World Cup to make an impact?
I mean, I have to say, everyone who's come in has done well and exceeded expectations, and people like Harry Maguire, Joe Gomez have done well. But you don't expect them to be, at this stage of their careers, knocking on the England door. Not an England door 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And it's just, it highlights, Gareth Southgate's putting together the best he can with what he's got. And unfortunately, it's not very good because there aren't that many English players anymore. You look at...
the issue I've got with this is that we are just happy or we are just allowing the years to roll on. 2014, Roy Hodgson said he brought young players into that squad because it was all about building for the future. Look what happened at Euro 2016. I know what will happen at the World Cup in 2018. Others may have a different view, and let's hope that proves to be the case. But we just seem to be happy to sit back and say, OK, well, we haven't got any English players, so let's get back to the Premier League.
Well, we wasted the opportunity. Greg Dyke completely wasted the opportunity of his commission, where a lot of effort was put in for over a year. Loads of people were spoken to, and he came up with such ludicrous proposals and didn't have the Premier League on board, so nothing was ever going to be done, and that was a generational project. So we've got to wait another 8 years before everyone thinks, oh, not another commission, and actually thinks we need it. I think, to be fair to Gareth Southgate, he recognises the fact there's a lack of talent, and he's trying to do it in a different way by getting more cohesion between what players he does have, and hoping that the sum can be a load better the whole can be a lot better than the sum of the parts. But yeah.
Andy, I just want to mention, because the first thought that occurred to me when I saw the England squad on Thursday was to look at Germany's squad. They play Brazil week on Tuesday. This is by no means exhaustive. Manuel Neuer's still injured, Bayern Munich. No Mario Götze in the squad. Scored the win in the World Cup final, of course. Marco Reus, just coming back from injury, he's not in it. But the names Emre Can, Draxler, Gomez, Gundogan, Khedira, Kroos, Müller, Ozil, Sebastian Rudy, Leroy Sané, Lars Stindl, Sandro Wagner, Timo Werner up front. That's just the midfield.
Well, of course it is. And off the top of my head there, as you rattle through those names, I'm thinking probably most of those, well, apart from Ozil maybe, and a couple of others...
Don't say they won't get into the England team.
No, what I'm saying is these are Champions League players. They're not just, Bundesliga or Premier League or La Liga players. They're Champions League players. He's got a wealth, Joachim Löw has got a wealth of Champions League quality players to pick from. He's got more. So going back to England and your original point... The idea, my beef with it is that, listen, we've had, how long ago was it that we were talking about our successful underage teams, our successful under-20s, our successful under-18s, our very successful under-17s. And we were talking about those players. We opened a squad of 27, and the players that you mentioned, someone like Tarkowski, they are getting their chance because they've done well in the Premier League at a certain level in the Premier League, which is fine. And as you say, a great day for those type of players. However, I just think there's a chance here. He should have taken a gamble. Why not take a chance on a couple? If you're going to pick 27 players, you know what? Take a chance. Take Phil Foden. A guy who has won the World Cup, who scored 2 goals in a World Cup final for the under-17 teams. OK, he's had a couple of fitness worries recently, but I think he's fit again now. How about Jadon Sancho playing for Borussia Dortmund? Just, if you're going to have a squad of 27, give us some hope that actually just being a regular in the Premier League doesn't necessarily... If you're a regular in the Premier League and you're English, you've got a chance of making it. I'm not sure that's right. Look at the players he's brought back in. So on the back of 2 or 3 good performances for Liverpool, Oxlade-Chamberlain's back in. On the back of, I'm not entirely sure what, Welbeck's in the squad. And it's as though, actually, OK, once you're back into a team and you're performing well in the Premier League, you're in. Well, I just think there was a chance maybe to put... OK, Lewis Cook has come through the ranks, but maybe there was just a chance to be a bit more adventurous rather than just say, well, actually, you know what, it almost feels like a reward. he talked about Jake Livermore still being in the squad, almost as though it was a type of reward for him turning up last time when he'd been left out originally. And that, I think, is where he's missed the trick. You can't actually sort of basically sort of say he's got, you know, it's not his fault. He hasn't got those type of resources that Germany have got. But I think he could be a bit more adventurous rather than just go for people who are doing well in the Premier League. OK,
let's move on to a couple of the picks or decisions that Southgate will have to make. Goalkeeping first up. Joe Hart back into the West Ham team last week. I mean, we know the chaotic circumstances around that game, but comes straight back into the team, makes a mistake in that game. Does he start this game? No,
I don't think so. Let's be honest, Hart is in that squad on experience alone, isn't he? There's no other reason for picking him. Because, as you say, he's been out of favour at West Ham, comes back in that Burnley game and doesn't do particularly well. But then who do you choose from with the others? It's a choice between the game yesterday, isn't it? Stoke-Everton, Butland in Pickford. I think Butland, I'd give him the nod over those. Pickford's distribution is very good, and I think that's obviously a factor with Southgate, especially as he wants to play three centre-backs. But it isn't an easy choice, Neil. We could all sit around this table and make different cases. And we're talking about here your #1 goalkeeper, not just for these friendlies, going into the World Cup. And this really has echoes of Capello, Rob Green, that situation a few years back, and we all know how that ended. It's far from ideal, but yeah, it's just very underwhelming and really an indictment of where we're at with the Premier League, really, in terms of how few English players. I take Andy's point that he could have been a bit more adventurous, but only to so much extent, I feel. And the worry for me is, will we be sat here in a few years' time having the same conversation? And I say that in the context of we're all really excited about England under-17s, England under-20s, what they've done, but will the pathways be there, Neil, for those players to go to the next level and break through at first-team level?
And should there be more media pressure, more pressure from supporters, for managers in the Premier League to bring through English talent and play them in their first teams, for these academy graduates to work their way into the team?
I think every football fan loves to see a homegrown player come through, especially if it's an English player. But we've got to deal with reality. We're in a situation where 9 Premier League managers have been sacked this season. The top 6 clubs, the managers are under huge pressure to deliver success now. And so all of that works against the idea of long-term youth development. You get caught in this vicious circle, really. But I mean, certainly looking at that England squad, it's as sort of weak as I can remember it for a long time, and accordingly has to manage expectations going into the World Cup finals.
But if we are going to project the Premier League as the best league in the world, and the circus that surrounds it, I mean, we wouldn't doubt that, then surely we have to try to preserve and look after the England team and the future of it.
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry. OK, that's the altruistic and holistic view, but how do we do it?
Well, the only way to do it is to get the Premier League on board, and they've always sat outside since the FA missed a trick back in 1992 when they didn't get a proper control over what was going on, and since then money has dictated where the Premier League's gone, and the members' self-interests. Somebody needs to say, and it's turkeys voting for Christmas because it restricts their own abilities in Europe if you have to play with quota systems. But, for the sake of football, and it is only going to come from fan pressure. And it has to be a sustained...
But that's the point, Stuart makes, is that we have to check that the supporters cherish young, local talent, one of their own, Harry Kane, for example. But supporters cherish that, and it's important. You can see the importance to Harry Kane and to Tottenham, not just because of his goals, but because of his emotional bond and the attachment to the club.
They do, but they want success as well.
Yeah, success as well, yeah.
Liverpool fans like nothing better than one of their own, but they'll cherish Mo Salah right now as much as one of their own. That's the thing.
More than Stevie G.
Well, right at this moment, they probably do. Yeah. But no,
he's doing all right. He's doing all right with the academy squad.
Of course, he's doing brilliant with the academy squad. Of course not. But the point is, they cherish success probably more than they cherish bringing through their own players, even though they do that. What I would say is the answer is for England to produce more technically gifted young players. Because right now, at the moment, you look through most of that squad, you look through what he's got to pick from. Club managers trust English players to do the hard yards and foreign players to do the technically advanced, gifted stuff. It's a very basic assessment of it, but it's pretty much true. The creators, the mavericks, the game changers, they're not English. They are not English. So that is the situation. Unless kids come through that are trusted to do that, then we'll be at this situation. We'll have squads like this for many, many years to come.
Terribly sad. Are we even going to the World Cup?
Politically,
Politically, yes.
I think it would be a mistake for England to boycott a World Cup that's held in Russia as things stand at the moment. Safety has got to be the primary concern, obviously, and if the players can't be safe, the fans can't be safe, there's no question, let's not go, because it's not worth it. That said, I think, sport has this amazing ability to sort of transcend politics still, however much politicians try and use it. When the soldiers came out of the trenches on Christmas Day 1914, it was to have a game of football. That's the sort of mentality that sport does. The bloodiest war ever was, put aside for a game of football. This Cold War can be put aside for a game of football. I don't think we should be... but there again, what I do think should happen is if Russia does continue in its current being at odds with increasing portions of the world, an aggressor, then perhaps a few more people should get together and say, is it appropriate to hold a World Cup in Russia? Because it's certainly not that. The other thing is, if England do go, we've got to stay away from any sort of gimmicks that help promotes Putin's regime or some of the things that's going on there, because we've got horrendous pictures in our history ahead of the Second World War in Germany with Nazi salutes and things like that, where we've made huge missteps. It's all about playing football out there. Let's not get involved in anything else, but let's go and play football there if that's what the rest of the world are doing.
Stuart, you're going to Moscow in a couple of weeks' time, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
Both are, aren't we?
You both are, yeah, in the Europa League tie.
Yes.
Because Arsenal have drawn CSKA.
I volunteered for that.
You did, yeah. How do you feel about the trip? Do you feel, in these circumstances, and we've all been in situations, we've all been to cities or countries which are a little bit edgy, but do you feel safe and secure as things stand about going? Are you comfortable with the decision?
I've been to Moscow, Russia quite a few times through work, really, and life has to go on. And I think Southgate said this in his address the other day when he said you can't live in fear. But I think probably for Matt and myself, we'll be travelling as part of a press group. Everything will be put on for us to travel together, hopefully safely. It'll be well organised. You probably have bigger reservations if you're a supporter going independently, in fairness. I don't think we should make a huge thing about it, given that there'll be Arsenal fans trying to make their own way there through.
But your safety is every bit as important as any other supporter going. That's the point.
Of course it is, but I guess I feel we're probably more protected than what they might be up against. I think, just coming back, Neil, to the main question on England there, Southgate makes a good point, I think, last week, where he talks about the fact that really he alluded to the Cricket World Cup in 2003 and said that this shouldn't be a decision for individual players, that the FA, in conjunction with the government, have to make a decision here, not leave it in where, Dele Alli, what are you going to do? Harry Kane, what are you going to do?
Because we saw this with Chelsea and Tel Aviv all those years ago.
Yeah, and what a mess that, turned into. So I think there has to be some, a collaborative approach there that takes it away from individual players being put in a difficult position of what's their stance on something like this.
Yeah. OK, good stuff, guys. We're going to go back to Premier League matters next. Andy, you ready for this?
I'm ready for it, mate.
Good stuff. We're going to talk West Ham. That's coming next. OK, I got in bright and early to read... one of the first things I read this morning was Ollie Holt's column on Jose Mourinho, which was a drive-by. And then I got to your column, Andy.
Yeah.
Which is another drive-by, isn't it? History, heritage and heart, that's the Hammers of old, but not today. For some reason, it took an entire week, and it was not even through official club channels for Karen Brady to finally talk, which she did in her newspaper column yesterday in The Sun. But there are various points that you make about West Ham's history and their heritage and their rampant commercialism, which you don't particularly agree with.
Well, no, I mean, the whole statement or the piece that Karen wrote for The Sun yesterday was a part and mission of guilt, a part apology, part how they're going to try and put things right. and there were just certain elements of it that grated. I mean, first of all, I don't know why it's taken her a week to actually address what happened at the London Stadium last weekend. I think that could have been done sooner, and she could have addressed the fans directly sooner, because clearly they were disturbing scenes last week. The heritage and history, she starts off by talking about this. Now, listen, I mean, West Ham has plenty of history, plenty of heritage, plenty of heart, but so do many, many other clubs. So in a way, that's a red herring. You know, it's everyone thinks they've got the prettiest wife at home, as Wenger would say. Everyone thinks they've got the most historic heart, you know, club are going. They all think that that's their club. Everton fans, Newcastle fans, West Ham fans. So that's by the by. And you can't talk about history, heritage and heart when you've just plastered London all over your badge and you've moved to an athletic
But
stadium.
before you move on, is it important to remember that? Whatever your heritage is, whatever those things that you hold, that the fans hold dearly, is it important to hold on to?
It is, but your heritage and your heart and your history is from the individual fan's point of view. You know, to whatever club you support, you have your own ideas of what the history, heritage and heart are. There's special memories for individual fans. That becomes the history and the heritage and the heart. Not buildings, not streets, not areas. That's what becomes your history and your heritage and your heart. West Ham fans won't be long before there'll be a generation of West Ham fans for whom their history and heart will be the London Stadium.
And they love that walk-up, you know, from the tube station.
Listen, well, they might do. They might be reminiscent about that in 70 years' time, as much as they're reminiscent about walking, you know, to the old bowling ground now. That's what happens. You know, you can't define that as a place. It's like when people talk about stadium, they say, "Oh, you know, this has been our home." It's like, I don't know. Let's just say, for example, Anfield. Now, I understand it's in that position, but you talk about the history of the ground and how this is, you know, it's been rebuilt about 10 times. You know, it's like in the sitcom films, and also it's like Trigger's broom. You know, 7 different handles and 4 different heads. It's still the same. That's what the history comes from within you. So I don't buy into all this, you know, this idea that they've got to cling on to this. It will always have history and heart because the fans will represent that. But then you've got to go on to the practical things. And I think the most startling element of the whole Karen Brady sort of slight mea culpa was when she's talking about the fact that what needs to be done team-wise. Now, there's no getting away from it, is that if you have a winning football team, it is a magic bullet. It solves an awful lot of problems. You know, I mean, the fans aren't invading the pitch if they're 1-0 up against Burnley and are 7th in the table. They're not invading the pitch, simple as that.
Which is where they finished last season, wasn't it?
Exactly. So that doesn't happen. So whether you like it or not, for the majority, a winning football team is a panacea. Now, interesting in that, she says about... Karen says about, we're going to have a change in player recruitment. We're now going to give the player recruitment policy, the manager and the football staff are going to be in charge of it. And that's the bit that jumped out at me, and I thought, well, what's been going on prior to that, you know? No wonder, really, it hasn't been a success. You know, so now, if what she is signalling is that actually the board are going to go back to what most managers would like a board to do, which is basically just sign the cheques, then that's positive. Because the bottom line is that for all the elements that are wrong with the London Stadium, we all know that it's not really fit for purpose. For all those elements, a winning team, playing good football, being at the top of what you would call the second tier of the Premier League, all those things, the things, of course, that were promised, and you can't, when they say promised, you can't promise that, can you? You don't know. Football, if you could promise it, it would be an easy thing to do when we're in a football club. So when they say they promised it, yes, they had these words. So I feel for them in that way. But those things, that would not solve, but it would mask a lot of evils. And I just think that it was extraordinary that the hint was, well, actually, the manager and the football staff haven't been in charge of recruitment till now.
What does the history and heritage mean to you? Not just of West Ham, but is it important that clubs respect that history and their heritage when they move? Not necessarily if they move stadium.
But it brings it into focus when they move.
As they evolve.
When they move stadiums, that's when it's brought into focus. I don't hear Man City fans moaning about...
Were you in the Northwest, for example, Matt, when Bolton moved from Burnham Park to...
I'm not nearly that old, no. I was no, I was.
It wasn't that long. It actually wasn't that long ago.
Late 90s. No, I wasn't. I was there was still when there were teams in Yorkshire then, so I was that side of the Pennines. No, it wasn't. But what I was thinking, the parallels, an athletic stadium that's become a. No one talks about Main Road and says, "Oh, we missed the good old days at Main Road." Do they? None of the City fans.
I think they do a little bit.
Yeah. Do they?
A
little bit, but it's masked by several Premier Leagues.
I miss going to Main Road.
Okay.
I miss going there.
Yeah.
I loved the fact there were 4 different types of stand. The stands were so individual and they're so unique.
But you wouldn't swap back, would you? Or would City fans swap? I mean, and the other parallel is Spurs fans. They're excited about their move.
Actually, I would.
They
wouldn't swap the team, but they'd swap the stadium. I suspect they'd swap the stadium.
But you bring up Bolton, then that's an interesting comparison because Bolton's new stadium. Well, I wouldn't say new stadium. It's obviously not new now, but at the time, it's good. It was good. It is a good stadium. You ask people, would they rather the old Burnden Park or whatever format, whatever name the current stadium or the stadium was originally?
21 years into that stadium.
21 years in, and it's a good stadium. And you talk about what will be interesting is the next club, maybe not the next club, but of a similar West Ham situation. Let's take Everton, right? So Everton, I'm sure, Everton fans, I'm certain, would say that they, in terms of history, heritage and heart, they're up there with West Ham, if there is a league table in this, if you can have such a league table, they're probably up there.
What are the first things you think of?
What are
the first things you think of when Everton's name's mentioned?
When Everton's name, I think of great atmospheres. I think of a night game with the great stadium rocking. Most of it would. But I mean, you sometimes have to move on. But I think
Z-Cars theme
I think of the Z-Cars theme tune, the atmosphere. You think of the great playing days. You think of the great teams, and you think of a team that for the last 20 or 30 years, for some of the time has had to play second fiddle in the City, but has still been an incredibly proud club, captured by David Moyes, of all people. He's summing him up as the People's Club. Now you think of all those things, but Everton fans, are they ready to leave Goodison Park? Listen, I suspect they are, as long as the move is correct. So as long as the stadium that is built in the docks, hopefully, as long as that is an exciting venue for football, as long as it creates a great atmosphere, as long as it's in an area where they want to be, as long as it, in a way, sort of encaptures the values of Everton, that's fine. But that's the problem with West Ham. They haven't done that. They haven't done that.
It's not a football stadium. That's the fundamental point.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
It isn't. It is an athletics track. I just want to... Can I take you back to your playing days? Because Stuart played professionally, so he's a man who does know what he's talking about and he's allowed to... But you played at Swindon Town when Hoddle was there. Did you... When you were in the dressing room, when you signed a pro contract at the County Ground, did you think of, I don't know, Chris Kamara has worn that shirt, Steve White has worn this shirt, Mickey Hazard's worn this shirt, it's Glenn Hoddle. Did that matter to the players?
I should stress here, I only got as far as the Anglo-Italian Cup, so I don't want people at Swindon fans coming to say, who's this guy?
You have been in a privileged position to be in a dressing room of a football club that's got a history and a heritage behind it. But did you care?
And you knew, obviously, about the famous League Cup winning side with Don Rodgers and John Trollope and all the rest. But there were people around. It was a strange time because there were people around Swindon. I mean, Mickey Hazard was playing at that time. Glenn Hoddle was playing at that time. So the people arguably as big as, or close to, anyone who'd been there previously in Swansea and Swindon at that time were in a situation where, they were heading for the Premier League. So it was almost as good as it had ever been. So I think you have to see it in a slightly different in a different context, but that's my fundamental thing with West Ham. I come back to. I've only been there twice for 2 matches, but my experience is it's just soulless. And so when you're talking about Everton will be moving to a football stadium, and this was always going to be the case with West Ham. There was obviously financial reasons for doing it this way. For me, it's so far removed from Upton Park. And interesting, when you say to Andy, what do you think of when you think of Everton? If you ask me that on West Ham, I still think of Upton Park.
I think of the night game. I think of their last game. Was it Manchester United, wasn't it? And the atmosphere that was generated. I mean, not necessarily the party.
I was going to say that.
not the atmosphere generated before the game.
On the bus.
The selfies on the bus. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm sure we'll come back to West Ham at a later date. I've no doubt. Next up, we're going to talk about Mark Hughes. He's the new Southampton manager. Can he get them out of trouble? More on him next. always fancied an alternative career as a football agent, and I think I've got my first gig. Stuart James has just employed me in the break.
I'm 42 though, Neil. You might struggle with me.
I'm after young English up-and-coming talent, though, aren't I, that can take us to World Cup glory. Matt, let's talk Tottenham. They won convincingly, easily yesterday at Swansea in the FA Cup quarter-final. They are now on the road to Wembley. They're playing an FA Cup semi-final at Wembley. Is it fair?
Yeah,
everyone plays there
it's
these
fair.
days. You almost did, didn't you?
I almost played once. Yeah, unfortunately, my lad was ill that day, and it was a close run thing. Yeah.
Another pro around the table.
Hey, Gareth Southgate once saw me play and said, "You must have played a bit when you were younger." So that probably suggests where we are as a nation. No. Graham Poll once gave me a Player of the Tournament award. It was
all right. You've given yourself a good review.
So if you're in the agency business these days, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, send me a video. Let's have a little.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there was no video.
I've seen you in your kit actually.
Yes, indeed. Anyway, we were talking about Spurs and Wembley, weren't we? Yeah, is it fair? There's the rules of the competition. Like you say, everyone plays at Wembley these days, even nearly me. I don't think anyone at the FA really wanted Spurs in the last four, if they're honest, because it looks tidier if you don't have a home team there. But with all this talk about West Ham and how important the stadium, there won't be any branding there, so obviously they'll fall apart and it won't feel like home anymore, and it'll be a proper neutral venue, because that's what it's all about, having all the statues up and the lettering and everything. Yeah, I mean, start of the season, that would count against them, the fact they've got to play the semi-finals at Wembley. They've turned that around. It's what it is. When they spend that much money on a national stadium, they've got to use it as much as they can. And you can't move these games around the country now because not enough... it's just not the way we've gone. And
OK, will there be any complaints when the draw is... Will there be any complaints from their semi-final opponent?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Well, it depends who it is.
Jose will love it.
If it's Jose, we might have a full 12 minutes worth. You never know. Maybe 24 this time.
They won't help themselves. But actually...
I wouldn't blame anyone for complaining. I really wouldn't. You know, the fact of the matter is, it's a cup competition. The idea is that certainly, at this stage, the neutrality should be essential to a semi-final. Can it be neutral when Spurs will have played, I don't know how many games so far, sort of 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, including the Champions League and other games? How that can't be fair? I don't see how that can be fair. It's okay saying, well, yeah, everyone signed up to it and etc. etc. It still doesn't sit right. I don't think it sits right. And if any manager complained about it, I wouldn't blame them at all.
But in the old days, Liverpool used to play at the old Wembley. Whoever they played wouldn't have played nearly as much, so it was always an advantage to one team.
It's their second home back in the day.
Back in the day, yeah.
But for starters, that Spurs haven't got far to travel. No matter what. When you used to have a neutral venue, it was generally pitched somewhere in between.
But then
the generally pitched somewhere in between, wasn't it? So
but that's the problem, really, Annie, isn't it? Should the semi-finals be at Wembley in the first place?
Well, exactly. That's what it goes back to, Stu.
If that and call me old school, but I used to like it in the day when it was Villa Park, and then there was even if you speak to players about it now, they feel that the excitement of playing at Wembley's been diluted because you get there too easily too often.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
Did you get a game at Wembley?
No, and that's what it comes down to.
No.
Spurs Man United, would be Villa Park would be ideal. I mean,
what if they got to the final? Two games at Wembley.
Yeah.
Then they play semi-final and they play the final. Let's talk Swansea Tottenham, because you were at the game yesterday.
Yes.
Far too comfortable for Tottenham, the Harry Kane team, but they were without Harry yesterday. But through to the semi-final. But how impressed were you with Tottenham's performance, and why didn't Swansea play in the same way they've been playing recently that's got them out of danger so far, so good in the Premier League?
It was a total mismatch, to be honest, Neil. Tottenham were good. Ericsson was excellent. Lamela played well as well, but Swansea gave them so much freedom. Swansea, with everyone available, would have given them a better game, I'm sure, but when you take out the Ayew brothers, one suspended, one cup-tied, Andy King cup-tied, and then he rested Fabianski and Fernandes, suddenly you got half the team missing, and that showed. But Swansea was so passive yesterday. It was really quite a flat occasion. I thought it was disappointing to see empty seats as well for the club's first FA Cup quarter-final since 1964. And, yeah, those that did go, there was nothing to get them excited at all from a Swansea perspective. And that is really totally out of sync with what we've seen since Carvajal's come in, that has to be said. He's totally turned things around from a position of 13 points from 20 games where they looked doomed. They look relegated. I think anyone who'd watched Swansea a lot over the first half of the season would have said they're going down. So he's done an incredible job, especially as, and with the exception of the last couple of weeks when he's been able to use a couple of new players, it's been the same team. And he's shifted things a little bit tactically, playing with a back three, but more than anything, got players to perform at a level that's unrecognisable from where they were at the start of the season. I guess that's management. You know, it's coaching and reworking things. And in terms of his personality, Neil, he's just been a breath of fresh air. He's obviously a quirky, eccentric character, and that's given everyone a lift. So they're not safe, but they've got a chance now.
Yeah, OK. He's moved them away from the relegation danger, 3 points off the drop as things stand. Can Mark Hughes, Matt, take Southampton clear of relegation danger? Of course, they're in the FA Cup today. They play Wigan, but he is now the new Southampton manager, having sacked Maurizio Pellegrino.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Mark Hughes. I thought the work he did, I got to see him when he made his bow as a club manager, having been Wales manager, which was a peculiar way of doing things. But
well, you've got a good story about this, haven't you?
Well, do you be the judge?
Can you tell us?
I can tell you. Yeah, no, I was such a big fan of Hughes. It probably cost me my most sinister voicemail message ever back in the day. He'd come into Blackburn. And a club that wasn't... They'd had Graham Souness headhunted as their manager, who'd been whisked off to Newcastle. And Hughesy came in and actually reinvigorated the place, brought a bit of modern science into the place, and got the club moving upwards when it was really sort of not really going anywhere, apart from mid-table obscurity under Suey at the time, which I wrote and was driving to the press conference the following day when a Newcastle number came up on my phone, and I thought, oh, well, someone from the Newcastle press office is after me about something. Let it ring out, cowardly, I know, but I was driving. And then the next thing I know, I get this voicemail message. Hi, this is Graham Souness looking for Matthew Dunn. I'll keep trying until I get you. And I thought, right, it was a misstep. I thought this is one conversation I want to have.
If he didn't get hold of you, Graham, he's still on the same number, by the way.
Yeah, still the same number. No, we did speak. We had a difference of opinions, but I think Graham's very much as a manager was very much of the old school, and that was very successful in its time. But I think Mark Hughes represents a modern thing. I think, to be honest, he has his limitations as well, which is why it didn't work for him at City. But initially, in terms of galvanising a club, getting it by the scruff of the neck and getting it moving in the right direction, I think he's got a pedigree in that, and I think Southampton is a good appointment. Yeah,
Dunny, is he the inspirational figure they need?
I'm not quite sure. I don't think so. Certainly not on. I like Mark Hughes a lot. I think on how it ended at Stoke, I'm not sure how. He's a change of voice. That's all he is. He's a change of voice. That might work. And if I was Mark Hughes, I'd actually be looking at it and thinking, I'm 2 games away from an FA Cup final. That's how much the balance has changed. Is that a manager is going into a football club and his first game is an FA Cup quarter final. You know, you'd be thinking, oh, this is brilliant. But instead, maybe the finances keep them in the Premier League. But if I was Mark Hughes today, I'd be saying, listen, we are 2 games away. Well, we're 1 game away from Wembley. We're 2 games away from an FA Cup final. And what that would mean with the history, heritage and heart that we talked about earlier to Southampton would be fantastic. Oh. He's just a change of voice in terms of the league form.
I was say the Southampton ball don't seem that fussed about cup finals.
No, that's my point.
Of course, they lost in the EFL Cup final.
Exactly, that's the point.
Yeah, OK. Guys, we've got to leave it there. Unfortunately, time's been us again. Thanks to the Dunnies, Andy, and to Matt this morning, and to Stuart James. Thanks very much for coming in. It's been too long, Stuart. You have to come in soon.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.